So you're a landscape photographer and you want to get that perfect lens. Today I'm going to talk about the focal length that I think every landscape photographer needs to have in their bag. So stick around. So I own two landscape lenses. I have the Tokina 11 to 16. It's an f2.8 lens, and I have a Nikon 16 to 35 f4 lens that's stabilized. These two lenses have been great for me, and I don't go anywhere without them in their respective bags. I use this one with my Nikon D750, and I use this one with my Canon M50. Now, I started using what are considered landscape lenses because they have a very wide focal range. When I mean wide, it starts at 16 millimeters. So on a full frame camera, that's a really nice wide field of view. This is made for a crop sensor camera. So if you have a Canon T series or the M50 or Nikon, you're shooting with a D3300, 5500, 5600, D7000. This would be a good landscape lens for you because the 11 millimeter on the wide end will give you about a 16 or 17 millimeter on a crop sensor camera. So I'm going to be talking about the full frame version here. This range, this 16 to 35 millimeter range, is a focal range that most landscape photographers will shoot at. They have a lens like this in their bag. Some use prime lenses. They might, like Eric, he has a 15, a 17, a 24, a 35, so that he gets into that range with 4 different lenses, whereas I like to use this. What I like about this lens, there are a few things that I really like about this particular lens, but this focal range is great for wide landscape shooting. So I'm going to drop images in here, and some of them are from trips that we've taken into the city where we shot from the Brooklyn side and we shot the city skyline, or we went over to New Jersey and we shot from there and got the skyline from the other side of the river. I've taken this on trips where we've gone up to shoot waterfalls, and it's great for that. And also I've used this on cruise ships, but mostly I use this in our Disney photography. The shooting that we did for the books was really centered on the attractions, and sometimes we use telephoto lenses, but a lot of the shots are big wide shots that we shot at night, and the ones that are mine in that book were shot with this lens. And we used to shoot for magazines, and this lens comes in so handy for getting everything in your frame. This is not a telephoto lens where you're going to pick something out of it. This is for shooting big sweeping scenes. This shot I took in California, it's a big sunset shot. It's wide. These shots from the Disney parks that I've taken over the years, some of them actually are vertical. These reflection shots here on either side, this is the only lens that I can use to get this on a full frame shot. This is a very hard shot to get if you don't have this lens, because most cameras and lens combinations are not wide enough to get the full reflection in. And I'm able to get some really cool, unique images at 16 millimeters with this lens. And we also use it for other types of images in the parks, different things that we needed to shoot for the books and whatever. Great for long exposures. This particular lens, and when you're looking for a 16 to 35, you're going to come across 2 different types. This one has filter threads, so you can quickly take an ND filter like this, screw it on, and now I'm ready to do long exposures. Very simple process. There's no apparatus I have to put on the lens with big square filters that slide in, and you don't have to do anything. And you can also stack filters. I could put another one on top of this one if I needed to. This was the selling point for this lens. Before I had this lens, I had a Tokina 16 to 28, which was a wonderful lens, sharp. I have nothing bad to say about that lens. It's inexpensive. It was only $600. This lens is over $1,000. But the reason I got rid of it was that I couldn't quickly just snap my filters on to take long exposures during the daytime, which is something I like to do. So I did some research and I found this lens, and I've been using it for about 5 years now, and this is a rock solid go-to landscape lens. Canon makes the same lens for their cameras, and every camera company makes some version of this focal length lens because it's such a versatile lens. But if you can get one that has the filter threads, I would do that, definitely. I'm going to talk about the stabilization in wide landscape lenses and why I don't think you need it. I almost never use mine. It's always off on this lens. And the reason that it's off is because I'm always shooting off a tripod, and the stabilization will actually cause blur when you stabilize your camera. So you don't want to use it when you're on a tripod. And I'm almost always shooting with this lens on a tripod. Most times it's either during the day when I'm doing long exposures, or at night, where I need to have a really long shutter speed because it's dark out and I need to let light into the camera and I can't have it move. So the stabilization for me is useless on this lens. So that's not something that I would concern yourself with. And if you're shopping for these lenses, it's not something that's worth paying extra money for. Yes, there are times when I'm hand holding it, maybe I'm inside and there's a large group of people and I want to get a shot. It can come in handy, but it's not something I use often, because typically when I'm doing that type of shooting, this will distort a little bit. In the corners, makes everything a little wonky, and it'll bend horizon lines and things like that. And you can correct for that in your post-processing. And most of these landscape lenses will do that. Once you start getting to the wide angles, you might have to do a little correction when you're editing, but it's not a big deal. It's a couple of clicks in the computer and you're good. I find that when I'm shooting groups of people, the people on the edges always have a little odd look to them, a little distorted. So I tend to use a 24-70 when I'm shooting groups of people, and I'll just move back. So that's another reason this really doesn't get used with the stabilization at all. The images are super, super sharp out of this, and I know I have friends that use the Canon version, and they are also very sharp lenses. These are great for getting all the details if you're shooting city skylines or you're shooting mountain ranges or whatever it is you're shooting. It's wonderful for that. It's just a great lens. Your camera comes with your kit lenses and things like that, and you're always questioning what is the next lens. We get that all the time. Is this a good lens to get? Is that a good lens to get? If you find yourself outside on beaches and shooting scenery and fireworks or whatever it is that you're interested in, you're tending not to shoot people so much, and you like doing landscape photography, maybe invest in something like this instead of a 70-200 right off the bat, or some sort of portrait lens. This will be something that you really love if that's the type of shooting that you're gravitating towards. I thought I'd show you what it looks like on my camera. So this is my Nikon D750. It's a full frame DSLR. It's not a huge lens. It's a decent sized lens. It's very easy to handle, and when it's on the camera, it's very stable. This Tokina is actually a little bit heavier than you might want on a small camera. For a crop sensor DSLR, it's fine. When I use this on the M50, I have to use it with this adapter, and it becomes a good sized lens. And on a very small mirrorless camera, it's not the best. They do make dedicated mirrorless lenses that are native to the cameras, and they will actually be more balanced than something like this. So you have to look for that. But all the cameras come with something in this focal range. So I'm jumping in here because I forgot to put something in this video. I didn't talk about Aperture. Now this lens is an f4 lens, and good landscape lenses can go down to f2.8. My Tokina is an f2.8 for the crop sensor. Why would you want that? Most landscape shooters are shooting at f8, f11, f15. You want everything in focus. Well, I was talking to my friend Guy, and he had posted this picture. Isn't this a great picture of the Milky Way? He shot this up in New York, and he uses a Nikon Z7. And he was using, I believe he said it was a Nikon 14-30 lens with this. I believe it's one of the new Z series lenses for the mirrorless camera. And it's a 2.8 lens, and he wanted to use an f4 lens, but the f2.8 he had to use because he needed more light in to get the Milky Way to show. So if you're into night photography like this, I don't mean long exposures where you're gonna blur something or you just need to let more light in to properly expose. I'm talking about trying to shoot stars and the Milky Way. The f2.8 is important. So if that's the kind of photography you're into, maybe you want to look at those lenses also. I mean, this lens that I'm talking about today is a great all-around landscape lens, but if you specialize in that type of dark sky photography, you might want to get the widest aperture that you can. It's not something I shoot often, or actually, I've only done it a few times, and I did it with this lens and it was fine. But for someone who does it often, that one stop of light might mean a lot to you. And, as far as your ISO setting that you have to use and the exposure times, because with long exposures and shooting the night sky, you can get star trails. So if you don't want them in your shot, then you need to, have a short enough shutter speed that you don't get them. And so the extra light that you let in and trying to keep your ISO as low as possible is important. I'm glad he posted that, and we were messaging back and forth about it because it was something I didn't know. So that was great. And if you guys have any suggestions as far as, how you shoot and what, the way you use it, we love learning from you, because there's a lot of great photographers out there, and we're learning as we do these videos. And it's so great to get tips from you guys about how you shoot and how you use your equipment. Okay, so I just wanted to jump in with that. Back to the video. Since we're talking about landscape photography and lenses today, I'm going to put this video here. This is some tips I have if you're going to go out and shoot landscape photography. And then this one is my review of the Tacchina lens. And, kind of just go through the lens and give you my opinions of it and show you some shots that I took with that one. All the images from this video were shot with the Nikon. Okay, see you in the next one.